I'm Julia Nalivaiko and I was born in the USSR. When I was 6 years old, the Soviet Union collapsed. At age 12, I moved to the other side of the world. Ever since, I've been asked the same questions.
What's it like over there?
What's borscht?
Do they drink vodka like water?
Do bears roam the streets?
So now I'm going back to find the answers. Kiev may be the city where I was born and raised, but after such a long absence, we need to be reacquainted. So I decided to be a tourist for the day and take in the sights aboard a tour bus. But the view from the bus grants only an outsider's perspective, and a city is more than the sum of its landmarks. It's not until you delve deeper that you realise it's the people who give a city its character. And when you interact with it, you have everything to gain, and you're bound to make a heap of discoveries. Once you get a whiff of a city's true flavour, your senses will be abuzz. It's important to remember that some things are bound to be lost in translation, which can be a bittersweet experience. But once you get a taste for it, it will leave you hungry for more. You may not find what you're looking for right away, but after some rummaging, you'll begin to unlock the city's secrets. And ultimately, it's all worth it when you discover its playful side. But if you want to really understand a city's present, you must learn about its past. For me, that means a trip to the open-air museum of Pirogovo. Located on the outskirts of Kiev, the museum is a replica of 19th century Ukraine. Today, it is host to the Żniwa Folk Festival, an annual event which celebrates the wheat harvest. Wheat has a special place in Ukrainian culture. Ukraine has long been an agricultural society with pagan traditions, and wheat was its most prolific harvest. It became a symbol of life and gave Ukraine the title breadbasket of Europe. Even the Ukrainian flag depicts a field of its favorite crop under a clear blue sky. The festival is a showcase of Ukrainian folklore and traditions. Artisans and artists come from all around the country to show their wares and run workshops. It gives Ukrainians the chance to get reacquainted with their heritage, which was nearly lost during the Soviet years.
Українська культура, вона поширюється. От зараз на вулицях можна дуже часто зустрічати людей в вишиванках, і це також продовження українських традицій. Видно, що люди повертаються до свого.
Under Soviet rule, the native traditions of the republics were actively discouraged, and after many years of repression, people feel the need to re-establish their cultural identity.
Це моє коріння, як ноги, які продовження коріння йде глибоко-глибоко в землю. Нам його відрубували протягом кількох століть. І, там, сусіди північні, західні, різні. І довели до того, що значна частина нашого народу вважає себе невідомо ким, просто населенням. А це неприпустимо, і тому от, саме для цього і подібні заходи треба.
The festival recreates the kind of large outdoor gatherings which have been part of Ukrainian life for centuries. They originated as pagan rituals, and music and dance have always played a major role in these celebrations. Now, to the delight of many, these old traditions are receiving a new lease of life.
И теперь, когда украинская культура возвращается, как большинство людей на это реагирует?
Я скажу, що з прихильністю вітають. І от я з такою зовнішністю, в принципі, нещодавно, кілька років тому вже був заселецем. І люди привітно ставляться до цього. Є окремі, які ненавидять усе українське, не дивлячись на те, що виросли, топчуть цю землю, їдять, харчуються, повітря це дихають, воду п'ють, а вони чомусь не люблять. Я цього не розумію.
After years of Russian dominance, many Ukrainians consider Russian their native tongue and don't identify with Ukrainian culture. This creates a tense divide between Russian and Ukrainian speakers. Despite the Russian Empire's multiple attempts to eradicate the Ukrainian language, it survived, and folk songs have played a major role in its preservation. In the past 20 years, Ukrainian has gone from surviving to flourishing, but it still faces stiff competition from Russian.
У нас радіо ФМ в Києві є десь 40 радіостанцій, жодної немає виключно української. Так само газетні кіоски, буквально на пальцях однієї руки можна українські газети нарахувати, а говорять про те, що там російська мова принижується. А насправді ми не можемо, українці, забезпечити свої потреби в отриманні інформації, в отриманні музичного продукту з радіостанцій, з телебачення. Тільки через інтернет люди можуть собі здобувати те, що вони хочуть. Немає громадянського суспільства, яке лише формується, і так само і мовлення суспільне у нас поки що не зародилося.
One language that never left Ukraine is the language of dance. So, in the spirit of solidarity, I gather my courage and hit the dance floor. But with my head spinning and my partner's toes getting trampled, I decide to leave the dancing to the experts. The fact that these old traditions have survived is a testament to how deeply ingrained they are in the Ukrainian spirit. Hundreds of years of Christianity and nearly a century of communist rule couldn't get rid of them, despite their best efforts. Once communism finally fell, a new set of problems faced the entire population.
Я людина ще Радянського Союзу народжений, і в мене був переламний такий період. Якось прийшов. Мої батьки гірше це переносять. Прадід – окрема історія, розкуркулений, він ненавидів радянську владу, а дід в комуністичній партії був. Дивно так, але так мусили виживати. А сучасна молодь, їй важче в іншому, тому що це глобалізація, яка насувається на світ і на Україну, в тому числі, руйнує ці традиції.
Украинская культура, сначала ей надо было пережить коммунизм, а теперь ей надо пережить глобализацию. Ви думаєте, вона це переживе?
У нас є гарні слова такі, я не пам'ятаю, хто написав, «Я єсть народ, якого правди сила ніким звойована ще не була». І це дійсно так, якщо подивитися на історію українського народу глибини віків назад, то просто дивуєшся, що ця країна, Україна, її фактично і не було. Ще 18-19 рік це мізер для історії, але народ, мова збереглася. Так і кажуть вчені, що поки є мова, поки є і народ. Бо інакше асимілюються люди і вже вони вважають себе представниками якогось іншого етносу. Ми все одно справимося, бо козацькому роду нема переводу. Я це так відчуваю на собі, з мене цей дух пре.
Я вижу, ми всі бачимо.
І те середовище, що я от кажу, ця молодь, вони живуть тим самим, що я, слухаю те саме, подобається це наше рідне, і це є гарно.
As the day comes to an end, the evening's musical entertainment begins. Tonight, it's an outfit from Crimea, a region of Ukraine whose culture is heavily influenced by the Ottoman Empire.
Я тебе благаю, чужинцем скриджений лейлі отець. Будь мені у поміч, тобі ж я навзаєм дарую тару своїх овець.
Ukraine has been invaded by many of its neighbours throughout history. Poles, Turks and Tatars have all left their mark on the country, and this is evident in its rich musical tapestry. So whether you like to enjoy your music passively or actively, the Ukrainian repertoire has something for everyone. After exploring Ukraine's ancient history, I'm back in Kiev to revisit some of my own. I take a trip to my old neighbourhood, in a suburb of Nivki. The changes which have taken place since my departure are immediately obvious. Modern residential developments now sit alongside the Soviet-era apartment blocks. Supermarkets and advertisement-filled shops line the streets, creating new competition for babushki selling produce. Shiny imported cars sit alongside their native predecessors. Rudimentary sporting grounds are being replaced by world-class facilities, complete with soccer moms. Brand new Western-style playgrounds are popping up around the neighbourhood. But remnants of another not-so-distant era are still standing. The playground of my youth is a steely reminder of Soviet austerity and a stark contrast to new Western influences. After a failed attempt to retrace my childhood steps, I head towards my old home, a typical Soviet-style apartment building, the kind that millions of people throughout the Soviet Bloc would have called home.
In that flat over there is where I used to live with my grandparents and my parents. So that's 5 people in a 2-bedroom apartment.
Due to limited housing in the Soviet Union, it was standard practice to have several generations living under one roof. To this day, the gap between generations remains narrower than in the West, with grandparents taking an active role in raising grandchildren. What I remember most about a Soviet-era upbringing is the sense of community in these apartment blocks. It allowed kids the kind of freedom rarely seen in suburban areas in the West.
There's no such thing as playing in your backyard with a brother and sister. Nobody has a backyard. This is everyone's communal backyard, and this is where children play. And I'm really happy to see that it's actually still this way. I hope they remember their childhoods as fondly as I remember mine.
The only thing better than having fond childhood memories is reconnecting with them. On a nearby bench, I recognized the mother of my childhood best friend. After a surprise reunion, I discover she is now a grandmother, watching her grandkids. 17 years on, a generation has grown up, facilities have been upgraded, but for better or worse, life here remains largely unchanged. Having made a short trip down memory lane, the following day I travel further afield as I go in search of my late grandparents' old dacha. A dacha is a basic summer home that was allocated to many people throughout the Soviet Bloc. I make my way to the village of Dubechnya, about an hour out of Kiev, where I am met by various relics from the past. A monument to the Great Patriotic War and a Soviet-style cemetery. I recognize these landmarks from having made this trip many times as a child. I was last here in '95, just before leaving Ukraine with my parents. The 90s were some of the most difficult years in Ukraine's recent history. The Soviet collapse wreaked havoc in the country, forcing many people to leave in search of a better life. The most difficult part of our departure was leaving my grandparents behind. I saw them just once more before they passed away, and I've never had the chance to pay my respects at their graves. So to me, the dacha is their memorial.
Here she is, the dacha. Completely abandoned. This used to be a gate. From here to the fence used to all just be veggie patch that my grandma used to grow. Now it's all just weeds. This is where the red currant bushes used to be. These trees have always been very, what's the word, fruitful? There were always so many apples. We would make juice out of them, we would give them away, we'd make preserves. There they are. Familiar flavour. The house looks completely abandoned. Along this window here used to be big raspberry bushes, so you couldn't actually get to the window. Now we've got one raspberry bush left. And that's our crockery. I even recognise the cups. That's the fridge we used to use. It was always full of my grandma's amazing cooking. Strange place to put it. This was our favourite lilac tree. I remember it in its glory days when it was just bright purple, and right here would have a dining table full of family and food. It's just so weird to see this place completely run down. My grandparents love this place so much. Spend all of their time here that they could. Now it's all gone. These were the front gates. This is the drive up to the house. God only knows what's happened to it. And on the other side of it should be some chestnut trees that my grandfather and I planted when I was little. Let's have a look if they're still there. There they are. We planted them as seedlings when I would have been 6 or 7. And my grandpa said that one day I'd come back and they'd be taller than me. I just keep thinking of when we left Ukraine with my parents. My grandfather used to write me letters. Sometimes he'd draw a little picture of the chestnut trees. show me how big they were. I guess they're pretty big now.
The Soviet Union and its collapse had an irreversible impact on the lives of millions of its citizens, those who left and those who were left behind. Leaving Ukraine meant separation from loved ones. For our family, that separation was permanent.
You know, my grandma actually died in that house. And it was years after the last time that I'd seen her. And she loved this place so much, and I know that that's where she would have wanted to die, but just seeing it with my own eyes, looking like this makes me feel really sad. I wish I could have been here.
As I farewell the dacha and start making my way back, I see a familiar face. This is Nina, a neighbour and longtime friend of my grandparents. Once she recovers from the shock of seeing me, she tells me the story of the dacha. After the death of my grandparents, it was left in the possession of some distant relatives. After a while, they became unable to look after it, but due to the bureaucracy of post-Soviet privatization, they couldn't sell it either. So it just sat there, abandoned and unloved.
Це якби вони були, вони ж який же тут порядок держали. А
И так любили здесь проводить
да,
время.
да.
Так что мне как-то грустно смотреть, что там никто ничего не делает.
Грустно, мені теж це дивиться. Оце ж ти не знаєш, де й бабушка похоронена. Не знаєш? Де дідушка, там і бабушка. Тому що ми їздимо туди, раз у год ми їздимо туди.
А, это вы ездите. Спасибо вам.
Їздимо, ну як, скільки років, просто це ж не можна вичеркнути.
Конечно.
І вони такі добрі люди були.
Я помню, как вы нам молоко давали.
Да, вже тепер корів немає, а бачиш, козами зайнялись. Я зараз подаю, як будеш пити.
As Nina's husband Vasil arrives, along comes the inevitable invite to stay the night, and I simply cannot refuse.
Оце молока 2 кози дало.
Milk from 2 goats.
1,5 літра.
After the cats have their dinner, it's time for ours. Nina quickly whips up a feast made entirely of ingredients from their own farm. The food is simple, but everything tastes so fresh and vibrant that my taste buds feel more alive than ever. Soon the obligatory shots are poured, and no one is spared, not even Stu behind the camera.
Ну, за встречу.
Половинку. Так і бери. Як його звати?
Можна йому чи...
Стюарт.
Як?
Стюарт.
Стюарт?
Стюарт.
Ну, типа стюардеса.
Да.
Стюарт. Стюарт, давай. Стюарт, бери, попробуй. Самогон.
Samagon is the Ukrainian word for homemade liquor, and Vasil is clearly proud of his.
Український самогон. Не чистий самогон, 50 градусів.
After a few more shots, we are all having a great time, and Stu starts losing focus. The next day, in the beautiful morning light, I'm suddenly sad to be leaving this place. It holds so many great memories, and I feel like I've just been reunited with long-lost family. Vasil is on his way to the markets to sell his produce, and gives me a ride back to the main road. I say my goodbyes, knowing it will be some time before I see him again. I've often dreamt about revisiting this place, and now that I have, it feels like it was just another dream. But for now, I'm heading back to Kiev and back to reality.
Стали мися сльози з очей ляти, ніхто не заплаче, ні отець, ні матка, лим за мною заплачуть 3 дівчатка, ніхто не заплаче.